Shalom, my friends. Shalom and Shana Tova to you all. I am, of course, Rabbi Sol Solomon, the founder, spiritual leader of Temple Sons of Bitches in Great Neck, New York. And I have with me, alas, not a Jewess, but close. I have an Italianess with us. Her name is CANDICE GUARDINO, and she is an actress, she is a performer, she's also a writer because she has created a solo show that she has been doing for many, many years, and she's bringing it now to New Jersey. Ooh, to the, where is it? It's the Two Rivers Theater in Red Bank, New Jersey, and it's happening on January 8th. At 2 and 8 in the afternoon is a show called Italian Bred, which is sure to get a rise out of you. Ladies and gentlemen, won't you welcome, please, the lovely, the talented, and the very, very Italian CANDICE GUARDINO. Shalom to you.
Shalom. Thank you so much for having me.
Most delighted to have you in the neighborhood. So, okay, when did you first start putting together the show Italian Bred?
Oh, goodness. Around 2013, I started doing some stand-up and working the characters and figuring out how mom character worked on stage and how dad character worked. And then I started putting together my childhood stories. And then I thought, okay, let's make this a theatrical show because I have such a theater background. I went to school for theater. And I added some songs in there. So somewhere around 2014 is when I had I call it the first incarnation of it. And since then it's had several incarnations and learning to be what it is now, which is a full theatrical performance. And I'm excited because I'm finally taping it for a comedy special for streamers.
Ooh, Mazel. So wait, is this New Jersey tape? You do two tapings that day. It's on camera.
Yes, January 18th, it is on camera. So I tell our producers are telling the audience, if you bought tickets, be ready because you could be on camera.
Oh, I should go and in the middle start singing Jewish songs so the camera would pivot toward me and then I'd become famous. I would love it.
It's perfect, actually.
I could also heckle in Yiddish. I don't like to do that, but sometimes. So have you ever had to deal with a heckler when you were doing stand-up or even when this morphed into a theater show?
Yes, I think heckling is much more common when you do stand up in a comedy club, right? Because when you enter a theater, there's this sort of unspoken rule of, you have to sit and watch a performance. But I, of course, opened that door at the beginning of the show, which is I talk back to you, you talk back to me, and it's very conversational. So I've opened that door. And every now and then I get someone who yells something or something and, disagrees with something I say. And it doesn't bother me. It makes me giggle. And if they, I think in the course of maybe the couple of years that I've been really doing this, I think I had one heckler that was just rowdy, and I actually had security take him out. It was very funny, and the whole audience was laughing because it was like, you're ruining our time, get out. And my go-to statement is always, if you think you can do better, come on up. I gave him the stage, but he wouldn't come up.
Actually, with you, considering, you're Italian, you've got family, you could just say, understand I could have you killed. Understand, I know somebody who knows somebody who's in construction or sanitation, and you could just disappear very quickly in the bottom of the Hudson.
That's
right. So how you said it started as various pieces when you were doing stand-up. Is it different even today or on January 8th when you're doing it than it was a month ago, or is it now kind of frozen?
I change it every time I get up there a little bit here and there. Sometimes I'll take out a story and I'll say, you know what? I don't think this audience is going to resonate with this childhood story. I'll pull out another story and I'll put one in that I feel like would resonate a little better depending on what state I'm in, what city. But mostly, I will say, if you've seen the show before, you'll come see it and you'll say, oh, I remember that character. You may not remember a story, but you'll remember the character. You'll be like, oh, I love that grandma character, or, oh, that dad character, I remember him. But it's mainly me impersonating my family and interchanging stories. But for the special on January 18th, I actually kept every story in throughout the years, so that it's going to be a culmination of everything.
So you have to winnow and cut down into a 55-minute whatever.
That's right.
Did I get this wrong? Is it the 18th or the 8th?
Oh yes, 18th.
Oi, 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 I'm sorry. How could I, of all people, not know the
Oh,
number 18? Hi. Oh, I'm so sorry. It's January 18th.
yes, and every time you say "oi" or "shalom," I'm giggling because my grandmother grew up. Well, I should say she lived in an old Jewish Yiddish building in Brooklyn, and that's where I grew up. So for me, I actually say a few words here and there throughout the show, and someone will say, "But that's not Italian." I'm like, "Yeah, but that's how I grew up." She used to use words like "verschnicket" all day long, so that those are the words I use.
Because they did. If you were in Brooklyn in those kinds of days in the 70s,
Yes.
well, you're not that old, like 70s, but 80s even, and all these old Jews with numbers on their arms, they were living, coexisting with the Italians with cement on their shoes. This is how they all lived.
That's
So,
right.
can you give us a little taste of a character that you do
Yeah.
in the show, whether it's your grandma or a male character, whichever, whatever.
Yes, I'll do the grandma because my grandmother is not your typical, people always think Italian grandmother and they think that short woman, the house dress, those tan tights and the awful orthopedic shoes, but my grandmother wasn't like
I
that.
wear those, but yes, okay.
Yes. My grandmother was always dressed like in black sexy slips and dresses. She had spike heels, she had red lips, and she'd always have a cigarette hanging out of her mouth, and she'd talk with this really deep rasp, and she'd be like, Candace. And she always gave me the most ridiculous advice that you should never give a child. Like, let's put it this way. My first introduction into men and sexual behaviors was grandma teaching me how to make meatballs and relating the meatballs to men. And that's all I'm going to say. And it's like ridiculously inappropriate for a child to learn that way.
All right. I don't want to know about the sauce. I
Yes.
don't know about the sauce.
Insane. That's how she related everything. She was a very body, loud, tell it like it is character that had this rasp, and the cigarette there was always smoke everywhere.
And did she have malapropisms, or not even? Did she have her own sort of aphorisms and sayings?
Yes.
That
She would say things like, oh God, I'm as hot as a hooker in church. She used to say that all the time.
say this all the time. Kind of wish I knew your grandma. Okay. Now let me ask you. This is interesting to me. Your grandma was this obviously outlandish, wonderful persona. Was your mom completely different because she grew up that way, or was she similar? Did she try? I don't want to be like my mom. I'm going to be like a nun.
Oh, well, let me correct that actually. This will make more sense to you. It was actually my dad's mom. So my mom's mom passed away really early, so I didn't have much of a relationship with her. My dad's mom was a single woman in the 50s, when my dad was born in the late 50s, early 60s. So like she was a single woman at that time, really unusual, right? Usually everyone was married, no one was having children out of wedlock, and she had this very interesting life. And then when he met my mom is a very reserved, quiet woman. When I impersonate her, I usually do a lot. I have I call it a big soprano voice, but I do. I have like an opera voice sometimes, and I can make fun that I literally use that for my mom because my mom's reactions to everything was always like, oh my God. And she'd be really nervous. And the energy of her was always like, I need everything to be white picket fence perfect. And grandma would come in and totally wreck that idea. And that is the culmination of the two women are complete polar opposites. My grandmother would curse like a sailor, and my mother would say, oh, shush, and go, oh, I can't believe I said shush.
Wow, well, she's like Laura Petrie. My God,
Complete polar opposites.
now are your parents still with us? Are they still?
Yes. Oh, yeah. My parents are totally still with us. My dad just retired this year, which is a very interesting. Parents in retirement is very interesting to me. So they are still here and they are very much fans of the show.
Yes. So I'm wondering if they go see it and they see not just grandma on stage, but themselves
Yes.
impersonating it.
I will tell you they were not happy in the beginning because my mother said to me, all your talent and all you're going to do is impersonate us? Like you could do that at home. Like my mother didn't understand it. And then my dad was like, don't embarrass us. That was the whole thing. Italians don't want to be embarrassed. They don't want to look bad. And if you're going to do it, are you going to make any money? Because if you're not going to make any money, why are you doing this? Like, they don't understand that. So I really had to hammer home that I think it will be worth it. I think audiences will like it. I had to convince them. And then once my dad's an easy sell once he saw a packed audience here or there. And then all of a sudden sold out tours started to happen and my dad was like, "I'm in." And then all of a sudden it was, "Hey, when you say this line about me, can you change it? You're not doing it right." And now I get notes. And I'm like, "I'm getting notes from you people. You people didn't even like this idea." So now it's a completely different thing. We have t-shirts. They're selling the t-shirts. It's a whole thing.
This is one. I mean, this is what you want, of course. You don't want them hating. You don't want to go up on stage thinking, "Okay, I'm going to do something that my family hates," but we're going to do it anyway.
That's what what we do is we pull, like, part of me is a comedian, right? Like I pull from my experiences. So not all my experiences are rosy colored. They're not, easy experiences. And I'm going to talk about them. And mom and dad are not going to look like the perfect people. And I was like, I hope you're okay with this because I'm telling it the truth like it is. And that's something that a lot of comedians do.
Were you senseless or something? Or what went down there?
No, I just think it's the idea, right? That like nothing is perfect. So if you're going to tell a story, you got to tell the truth. You got to tell the grit of it. And that to me is what makes the show so relatable is that it's really the truth. I didn't sugarcoat anything and I didn't grow up in a household that sugarcoated anything. Oh gosh, no. Oh no. There was no like, "Oh, Candice, you're amazing." And, "Oh, Candice, even though you didn't win that trophy, you should have." No, my dad was like, "Well, you weren't good. You're not getting it." And that was the energy I grew up in.
But now you have a child of your own. So are they now perfect grandparents? Are they like Bill Cosby used to do the big about how did these people turn into like angels when my children are around? I mean, is it like that or?
Yes, it's 100% like that. Bill Cosby is actually really right. They were not strict with us, but they were very tell it like it is, and no, figure it out for yourself, all this stuff. And then all of a sudden, now I have a little boy he's only a few months old, but mom and dad are definitely grandma and grandpa, different people. I'm like, you come in here and you're giving him toy. You told us no growing up. "Oh no, you're not getting that. Oh no, you're not getting that. Oh yeah." And I'm like, you're giving him everything. And then when I take it away, "Candice, how could you?" I'm like, now I'm the bad one.
There you go. There you now they get. But let me ask you something. Behind you on the wall there, that does not look like a couple-month-old thing. Is that your thing? In the red background and the child thing. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, it's not a child. It is a woman putting on lipstick.
Okay, you drew that? You painted that? Or where did that I thought it was your kid that they, what is that?
So sweet. No, I bought it at IKEA. I thought it was pretty.
It looks like a baby with sunglasses on. Are we looking at the same painting?
She's wearing like a schmata on her head. I love it.
I love the word. I love it. So we're talking, by the way, with Candice Guardino. You're going to go see her on the 18th of January in the Two Rivers Theater in Red Bank, New Jersey, doing her show Italian Bred. But you did mention that you have a background already in theater. So where did you study theater and what were some of your favorite roles when you were learning to be an actress?
Yeah, so I studied at Wagner College, and I did musical theater there. I had a great time. I actually met my husband there, which was really a wonderful, pivotal moment for me. We have been together since then, so it's been such a long journey as like our relationship, which is really fun. And someone that understands your business is really important when you're, looking for that mate, that partner for life. They have to understand what you're about. So yeah, we both grew up in theater. And then I did a lot of touring when I got out of college. Oh gosh, I did a few I remember I did Blues Clues tour one year because it was super fun. It was good money. I enjoyed it. Yeah. Had a really good time. I did a lot of regional work. I did West Side Story. I played Anita at the time. Oh goodness.
You were an Anita in a touring West Side Story?
I was in a regional production of West Side Story. Super fun. Now looking back, I probably wasn't the perfect person to cast because I'm not at all Hispanic. But it's fun.
I mean, Jews and Italians close. Hispanics and Italians a little bit more. I don't know. It doesn't.
But I grew up as a dancer as well. So like I danced competitively for so many years, and then started to sing in my later years, and everything kind of came together in my later 20s. And that's when I sort of had, for me, I always talk about the pivotal moment where I was getting like a lot of work, but I wasn't getting to the level I wanted to. And I was the auditioning. I was getting tired of the auditioning. And I thought, the callbacks all the way to the end. Oh my God. And I was getting a little like, all right, I'm getting impatient. And I had a moment where I said to myself, I don't want to waste my best years standing in line, even though there's nothing wrong with that. And some people don't waste their best years. It happens perfectly, but it wasn't happening for me at that time. And I thought, all right, I'm going to do something for me that I've been writing stories, and I've always been a writer in some way. I wrote a few books that I've, been holding on to that I'm like, oh, I want to publish at some point. I'm a very timed person. My husband always jokes like that. I don't just rush. I take my time and figure out when I want to do these things. So then that's when Italian Bred started to come together. I started to do stand up, and that was kind of a pivot from theater. I mean, I love theater. I grew up in New York. It's like, how could I not? I actually think later in life now, I'll probably go back now because
Oh,
still in the union, I'm still in act. So it's like I'm still doing all the things. It's just I've pivoted.
okay, before you get back to that, I do want to ask, aside from doing Italian Bread, I think you were at, was it the St. Luke's or St. Clement's?
Yes. Oh God, no, it was St. Luke's. Yeah.
So, did you ever do any other shows in New York, off Broadway,
Oh God,
as
yes.
opposed to regional? As opposed, I'm just curious if you were in any
Oh
stuff.
gosh, no, many. I did do, I don't know if it's still around anymore. Remember that musical theater festival, the Nymph, all those years ago? I did a bunch of those when they were those starter musicals to figure out if they were going to have any legs and stuff like that.
NYMF, New York Music Festival.
Yes,
Yeah.
I did a bunch of those. Those were actually a lot of
Those
fun.
are not my favorite kind of nymphs, I have to admit, but oh, there, yes. And what else? Oh, cool? Did you, and others even off Broadway, like
Yeah, oh, I did. I did a few off Broadways. Oh God, I have to remember these names of things. I did some recordings too that were I don't know if they ever went anywhere. They were all these projects that were I don't want to say starters, but they were all these producers trying to get these musicals going. There was a lot more of that than there is now, I notice. Because I have younger friends that are like in their early 20s that will say, "Oh, that's not a thing anymore." And I'm like, "Oh my God, I did so many recordings and staged readings in New York when people were trying to do stuff like Playwrights Horizons. I did all these staged readings and I don't know where they went, but it's like, they either happened for the producers or they probably didn't. And but at least there was that
At least there was
exploration.
that moment. Yeah, I think they used to do like 30 musicals at NYMF, and one would make it to like an off-Broadway contract and go.
It's true. It was like, but at least there was that creative juices flowing. I don't know if I see that as much in that world anymore. But I'm sure it exists. Just gotta find it. But yeah, and then I did a lot of tours, and then I did a lot of regional. And then somewhere along the way, I ended up moving to California because I got pulled for the CBS Comedy Showcase to be a writer. And I thought, all right, let's do it. So I ended up going to California. Not to live full time. I just thought for the whatever it was, the 3 months or 2 months I was there, and Italian Bread was still in the early stages of, the Hudson Theater in California wanted to do it. That was actually the same theater that did my Big Fat Greek Wedding. When she had her first one woman show, it was the same theater. And she, me,
Yeah, I mean, they know the market, they know the audience. They oh,
the
this
market,
Maria Bardalos's thing is this is the same, but with a different kind of because
exactly.
Greeks and Italians, Puerto Ricans and Italians, not so much. Jews
Yeah.
and Italians definitely. Greeks and Italians, oh my God, mine's same olive oil. Really, basically the same exact thing. Yeah.
It's totally true. And I felt like, all right, let's do it. And so I was a writer for the CBS Showcase, and then I was doing the stage show with the Hudson. And then somewhere along the way, I ended up writing a few scripts that got purchased. I don't think they ever got made, but I was selling scripts, and I was like, oh wow, this is a world for me. And so I always kept Italian Bread alive because I felt in my back of my mind, oh, I'm gonna film it for streamers or some sort of cable one day, and I really want to get it out there and the exposure to that level that I want everyone to see it. And finally, because it's a word of mouth sort of show, someone will say, oh my God, I've heard about your show, but I've never seen it. So I thought, okay, I want it to be that point where it's like, all right, this is what Candice does, and then it's on to the next thing. That's sort of
I mean,
the
there's a guy who's actually been on the show, and I'm forgetting, I'm sorry, his name, but he did a show called "My Mother's Italian, My Father's Jewish, and I'm in Therapy." and
Yeah.
working that and living off that for not living off, but for like 15, 20, maybe 25 years.
Wow.
At this
Wow.
same kind of idea, solo show,
Yeah.
biographical, a lot more jokey perhaps than yours, as opposed to
Sure.
characters. But yeah, it's that, and you find a niche audience, and that's a big
Yeah.
niche. That's the point.
It is. And you sort of have to find what you do really well, right? Like I would always say, someone would say to me, "Oh, so you're a one woman show?" And I would say, "Yes," but also for me, it's more like a theatrical experience. You know, I've always came and saw a comedian. It's funny, you do a lot of laughs. Or I came and saw a one person show, and yes, it's a show, but to me, it was a theatrical experience is what I wanted to create for my audiences and for what I do, because I don't just tell jokes. I don't just sing. I don't just do this. And I wanted to story tell it all together. My favorite is John Leguizamo's. If John Leguizamo could sing, I think I would say that is exactly me.
I remember seeing, or Dave, the producer of this program, I remember seeing Mambo Mouth when nobody had heard of him, and it was just he knew immediately. It's like, oh, this guy. However, again, not quite Italian enough. When
No?
you're thinking, this guy's very, very Puerto Rican. It's very far from the
Okay.
Italian-ness
Oh,
that he was looking for. Yeah.
yes, absolutely.
So originally it was supposed to be called Pasta Mouth, and then he changed it to Mambo Mouth because he knew that
Uh,
it wasn't going to be. So let me ask you also. So having been a stage performer regionally, you talked about hecklers and stand-up performer. What are some of the funny, amazing, ridiculous things that have happened to you or to the people around you when you've been in shows, when you've been on stage? Any hell nights, any nights when scenery fell or something happened or what?
yeah. Oh goodness. So goes way, way, way back. But my very first tour, I think I was still in college at the time. Like I said, I did a tour of Blues Clues. It was that children's, I call it an extravaganza because it's like Madison Square Garden arenas you're filling with these thousands of children to come see this. And it was like my first night of performing because I had to replace someone. And I was still in school at the time. So I was kind of like all over the map. And they gave me the instruction. They said, "Oh, by the way, this is a very heavy costume." And I said, "A heavy costume?" And they're like, "Oh, you got to step into it." And I had to sing like this very high note, very soprano opera sound. And I thought, okay, I can do it, no problem. But I don't know if I could do it in this harness of a costume, and I have to stand up. And I said, but whatever, you know. I had like one quick rehearsal, and I did it in the rehearsal. I said I can do it, whatever. So I didn't think twice, but I didn't connect that. Oh, the microphone pack. If I lean too far against it, it goes on, and they were like, "Be careful," and whatever, all these things. And I thought, no big deal. Well, of course, the curtain comes up, and the characters are supposed to jump up, and there's a moment where the character's supposed to sing something, and I jump up, and I try to jump up, and I go to sing, and I don't jump up. I go up, and I go back, and my feet face the audience, and the costume was like almost like a Humpty Dumpty sort of feel, and I start rolling, rolling. And I'm continuing to try my best to sing, and I roll off stage. You gotta get me out of this thing. And so they get me out, and I just sang off stage into my mic. I was like, I couldn't breathe. The harness was so tight. It was this whole thing. So that was an embarrassing moment for me.
Did the audience even know that that was not supposed to happen? Did they think it was part of the act?
The cast was amazing. So I feel like they just kept going. There's so many kids in the audience, with those light things. So I don't think anyone connected, but I was so embarrassed. I'm like, at that moment, I was like, I'm an artist, and this is embarrassing. I'm like,
if you're appearing in the touring production of Blues Clues, at that moment, you're maybe not an artist.
Right. I was like, Candace, let's check yourself for a minute here.
Did you have to do that again the next show and figure out how to do it right? Or so you got to
I actually went to the stage manager. I was like, I need more rehearsal. I was like, I'll just put me on stage a few times alone, and I had to do it a few. I'm like, I can't just jump. Oh, I wasn't ready. It was too scary. But it got better. So that was definitely one that I will always laugh at. I'm like, oh, there's Candace rolling off stage with an arena full of thousands of screaming kids. That was one. And my heckling ones, I have, gosh, so many. But one in particular, I'll never forget. I got I was on tour. I don't remember. I want to say it might have been Chicago. And it was a theater that was sort of, the stage was lower. So the stage was lower and the first and second row seats were on the same plane as the stage. And
Right.
then the seats were rigged. So sort of that thrust feel. And I was performing and someone in the front row, I don't know if they had too much to drink. I don't know what happened. They had something to say. They stood up and their drink went flying. And I didn't see it because it was, a big theater. It must have been like a 500 something seat house. I don't remember. There was a decent amount of people there. But I saw something out of my eye. The drink went up. And before I knew it, this person moseyed up on stage with me. And I looked to my side like, you're standing next to me. So I had to improvise them back to their seat. And then they repeatedly keep trying to get up and jump on the stage, and I was like, oh my god. So then we had to eventually have that person move, but I think they were very drunk. I'm not from what I gather.
Yeah, well, they would have been drunker had they not splashed the drink. That would have been in them and maybe made them pass out.
At one point, I actually started laughing, and the audience really started laughing. I have a chair on set with me. It's a very minimal set. I had him sit down in the chair. I'm like, could you just sit there so I can finish this? Because I need to finish this part and get to the next thing. And then I moved him on out.
So this was doing Italian Bread.
Yes, this was doing Italian.
Now let me ask you. Here's the thing that you've done this show, as we've said, since like 2003. You were starting.
No, 2015 is when I started actually going into other theaters and figuring out the world. So 2015, I didn't start touring until 2017.
But have you, between then and now, had other solo performances or other pieces that you've written? You're concentrating on Italian Bread, but once you do one, isn't there this desire to create these other shows? So what's happened with those?
Sure. So stand-up wise, I may not promote these shows because I'm still figuring out what I want to say, but I do a lot of stand-up nights where I will do characters. For me, it was a very long fertility journey to actually have my son. So I always say the next phase is impersonating the doctors, the people, and the journey of what that looked like, because it was insane. No one would believe me. To the point where there's this one particular moment that people would laugh is that, as a woman, you got to go to a gynecologist. It sucks. The one doctor I went to, I put my feet up on the stirrups and the light broke to look, up your hoo-ha. He took out his phone and read his light. And I had a moment when my legs were up and I'm like, is this happening? And I'm like, how do I even my brain, I'm not a very quick reactor. I have to understand what just happened before I open my mouth. And I was like, what in God? And he's using his phone. And I made a joke, but I was very serious. I was like, listen to me. If you flip to pictures, I will sue you. And he kind of giggled, but he used his phone. He's like, I need a light. I was like, oh my God. And he was a crazy doctor. I had such crazy experience.
Yeah, wow. It's lucky you weren't pregnant during Blue's Clues, or else he would have used a glow stick.
Exactly. So these characters and stories that I'm working on, I just think it's the next phase. This is a beautiful way, not to say goodbye to Italian Bread, but it's almost like, okay, here's my childhood trauma, which I will always talk about, and these characters will always be a part of my world, but it's now the next phase of stories is the next phase for me of my life. I mean, marriage, child, all of that is just the next phase for me.
You mentioned that you met your husband, was it Tom Felici?
Yes. Feliciardi, it's a long last name.
An Italian name, not Puerto Rican, Italian. So he started in theater too. What does he do? He manages some of your thing because
he does. Oh gosh, he does so much. Every morning I tell my mom, I'm like, if I wake up and he's still next to me, I'm like, oh, it's a good day. He didn't leave me yet. It's a lot of work. But he does so much. So he books out the show. He actually, in the beginning of the stages of Italian Bread, I used to hire stage managers to come in, and we have this program called Q Lab where all the music cues, the lighting cues, sound cues, it's a very theatrical show. There's over 200 cues were built into this program, and they would call the show and, call the cues. And I started to realize I'm hiring these people. Yes, it's costing me money, but that's not the issue. They don't know my personality. They're meeting me and I'm saying, here's the lighting cue, follow the format. but they don't know my breaths. They don't understand my isms when I pause, why I'm pausing. He knows that so well. So I actually one day a few years ago was like, "Can you do it?" And he said, "But my husband's a trained theater actor." He was like, "I've never done the backside of this." I said, "Well, let's try it." And we had a show. There was a ton of people in an audience, and I said, "If I flop, I'll flop so big, and we'll do it. We'll do it together." And we laughed, and it was the best show I've ever had. And it was because every cue was on time, and it was because he understood me, and he understood the show so well that I said, "You know what? From now on, it's you." And so I roped him in. I said, "It's you." So he calls the entire show. He lights the entire show. He does everything. So I got very lucky with that. And
He knows your isms. This is an important thing.
you don't realize it, and you don't get that benefit. When you're touring one night, it's very hard to pull a different stage manager from each city to be like, "Hey, I'm going to be in Chicago in April. Can you call the show?" It's really hard. And then I'm going to be in, Washington in May, and then I have a different stage manager. So it's very hard when you have that Broadway show and you're sitting 8 shows a week. That stage manager learns your isms, or whoever's, it's wonderful. You have that chemistry. So for me, I needed that in order to get this show to the level it needed to be of professionalism, and that's why it worked.
Now, can I ask you also, you kind of mentioned in passing that you have written books. You haven't published them, you haven't given to them, but what are the books like? Are they,
Yes.
what is it?
So I'm a big fan of comedy essay books. If you've, gosh, I'm trying to think of an author that I love to
Jim
death.
Gaffigan, Tom Papa, maybe?
I mean, Tom Papa's great. I love him. Yeah, they're all so great. But I love essay forms. That's how my show is. I call them vignettes. They're still stories. They're all in essay form. And that's what I did. I wrote a book that I'm looking to publish. I think in the next year I'm going to publish it. It's called Call Me Candy, and it's I call it reason number 137 why I'm in therapy, because my, given name is a porn name, but that's besides the point. Yeah. Do you know what it's like being called Candy at fourth grade and something? It was awful.
By your own grandmother. So that's a, yeah. Who's tolerating, let's face it, she would know. No, I'm kidding.
It's pretty awful. So I would say this book is a culmination of all different essays and comedy essays of growing up. Something to as simple as, unfortunately, getting my first period, to as complicated as getting stuck in the Blue Grotto in Italy with my husband, in the little boat, and it was a ridiculous rescue, and all the ridiculous things that happened to me that I have to.
Think Venice? You got on one of those little gondola things, or no? What's the Blue Grotto in Italy? What is that?
We were in Positano. It's like Capri, actually. It's a little island off of the Amalfi Coast, and it's a small little boat. I'm a realistic person. This boat was smaller than my husband. My husband is 6'4". I was like, "You really want us to get into this little boat?" I call it the tampon boat. It was like a little tampon. I'm like, "You want me to jump in this boat?" And they're like, "Yeah, no life vest, no life vest." I was like, "No life vest? Give me the damn life vest."
Well, the boat could absorb all the water. And
100%. I was like, "Give me the life vest." No life vest, no life vest. And then you have to lay down on this way, and you have to row yourself through the bottom of the hole of this giant cliff. And then when you go in the hole, and inside is this beautiful, they call it the Blue Grotto, because the cliff actually opens up on top, and it's gorgeous. We got stuck. It was awful. It was like the worst. Our driver was wasted. I was like, "What?" And he wasn't driving a boat. He was supposed to just row us. He didn't row. He had a beer in his hand. I'm like, "What are we doing?" It was just a ridiculous experience. And then I tell, a story of as simple as I tried to get Botox for the first time, and I went and met this great woman, and then I go back, make the appointment, and she died. She just died.
I mean, infection yet? Why the hell? Come on, you're beautiful. What do you mean you gotta get Botox?
Through these things, and I was like, "You know what? I gotta write about this." Of course, I try to get Botox, and the first time I go, the woman dies, and I'm like, "All right, I'm not gonna do it." So
no, absolutely not.
All these things. So they're little short stories of ridiculousness in the book. Yeah.
That's so new. We need to look for this from Candice Guardino. Watch for her book. You have a website where people can go and
Yes. So the book is the website is CandiceGuardino.com. Right now the tour is on there. It's going to be updated once the special is, airing, and we'll get all that going. And then once the book is released, that will all be on there.
Now, last question for Candice Guardino. And by the way, if you're looking for a website, it's Guardino, but it's Guardino.
Yes.
So you are, what is it, 1 degree of separation removed from actor Harry Guardino. How is it, Brad?
I don't even know. My grandmother used to say Guardino, and my father says Gardino, so it's like whatever.
So did you ever meet, do you know Harry?
You know what? I didn't meet him because he passed away, I think, before I was born or right around that time. I have to figure.
He's been gone that long?
Been gone a long time. My dad knew him well. My dad has wonderful stories about him. My dad always talks about how he was always dressed in a purple velvet robe, which I thought is really funny. He loved being in a robe. And that just makes me giggle because that says so much about old Hollywood, right? Yeah, right. And he was a great cook, a lover of food, all these things my dad used to tell me. If you see a picture of my dad, it looks a lot like him, a lot like him.
Well, okay, remind me, what is the connection? You're the...
So my grandfather that I never met, so it's my father's father. It's his cousin.
Okay, got it. Just curious. Well, anyway, that won't be in the show that you're doing. It's called Italian Bred, that everybody can go see on the 18th of January, 2 times, and both are being taped. So when you can do the cutting, you've got 2 different things to go from. So here it is. Yes, you might even be on camera. If you scream and shout and cry and laugh, they'll cut through for reaction shots. So laugh extra loud and big, like ha ha ha. So they'll show you. But it's at the Two Rivers Theater in Red Bank, New Jersey. Tickets are available to both shows. There's a 2 o'clock and an 8 o'clock show, but they're selling out quick. So get your tickets to Italian Bred, B-R-E-D, featuring Candice Guardino, our guest in the neighborhood. I wish you certainly break 2 legs that afternoon and night. Mazel on the kid, because I know that was a big journey for you. Mazel on the husband, mazel on the books, mazel on the other pieces that you're working on and writing, and the stand-up as well. And thank you so much for being with us to start the new year.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Likewise. Shalom!
Hello.